Hi everyone, welcome back to the garden. Yes, my garden. After a few beautiful, inspirational, aspirational garden visits, it's time to bring things very firmly back to earth with a little catch up, a chat, and a walk around my jungle garden here in North Lincolnshire, where over the past couple of weeks we've had torrential rain, we've had downpours. Really, that rain has been so appreciated by the garden. You can almost hear the plants breathing a sigh of relief, or maybe that's just me for not having to water for a fortnight. It's been a few days off really. I say a few days, to be honest with you, I haven't been in the garden a huge amount over the last month, so we might see things in today's video that are just as much a surprise for me as they are for you. We will see. In today's video, I just want to walk around the garden with you, share with you which plants have grown well. Like I mentioned in previous videos, this year I haven't really been able to go for a proper summer display, so there's gaps, there's places where I might change and move plants around next year, but I think it'd be helpful to hopefully share some of the garden with you today, share with you some of the plants which have really thrived this year and others which have really struggled. Let me know your experiences in the comment section below. But anyway, today's video, just a gentle walk around the garden. You might hear the buzzards calling above, you might hear village ambience in the background, but please, hopefully, let those atmospheric noises distract you from any weeds that you might see. This video is very much down to earth reality here in my jungle garden. An early September walk around. It's currently not raining, the sun's starting to shine. We're filming this video at noon, so let's get started.
Firefly, how short is life? I dreamt we had more than 20. Seen this before, and I have lived more than plenty. Now lay me in the ocean. Why lullabies? I've used my time.
We'll start our proceedings then at the messy end of the jungle, where here I am certainly mid-project. As we wind our way through the lush vegetation, things possibly get slightly more messy and weedier in the middle, before coming out to the far end where, do you know what, it's actually even worse. So let's just start here and appreciate everything that I've done. So this part of the garden here, very much parked for now. This is where my patio is going to be going. I have a beautiful little pond there. That's going to be a project which will commence probably mid to late autumn time again, getting the patio down ready, and then in spring next year I will be getting the pond there. Looking forward to that. These walls went in earlier in summer, you might have seen those. So at the minute there's plenty of soil that needs to be pushed around, but you can see, looking over there, weeds grow effortlessly in my garden here. But on another note, just look how rich this soil is. Beautiful, dark, loamy soil. Once it's got a good bit of rain on it, this soil really comes alive, and it's so great for growing a huge range of exotics. You might notice some new plants at this part of the garden. Blechnum chilense there. We've got a few other little special plants. Most of these came from Shane Bilson. Yes, Shane, I keep mentioning he's a top guy, but really one of the most friendly guys in the tropical gardening space, and he's always got plans to share. Or swap, because he's potentially heading over to my garden very soon. We've got a beautiful Lismachia there. That one's actually from Tony Shep's garden, so thank you, Tony. That's if Shane actually told you he was stealing it. We've got a couple of other additions, those from a little trip to Vertigo. I took Harriet out to York, very expensive day going on merry-go-rounds and all sorts, but managed to get a little visit to Vertigo afterwards, where I got a couple of these beautiful plants here. These, in case you wanted to know, these are Brunnera. Very, very beautiful variegation on the leaves, a lovely silvery sheen, and hopefully this kind of vegetation will just soften the edge of this wall nicely. There will be some more plants going in, but not ones that I'm buying. There'll be ones that will be splitting up from further up the garden, which we might see very soon. And over here, we've got a pink china. Yes, I'm giving this colocasia another go, but this, well, I believe this one to be one of the famous hardy Yorkshire Chris forms. I believe Shane got it from Chris some years ago. Chris's form seems a lot hardier and tougher than the ones I've experimented with in the past, so we'll give it a go. Here, as you can probably tell, my jungle garden, even at noon, now the sun has started to drop a bit, is incredibly shady. So the lower light levels mixed in with quite a rich, luxurious soil might suit this large leaf beauty absolutely down to the ground, or it might struggle in winter, we will see. But it's gone in there, planted it a couple of weeks ago, so it's hopefully got time to really settle in and get spreading around before any cold weather comes. Over this side though, just pushing back, we'll see another begonia I got from Shane. But bamboo, these are something that I wanted to talk about. As in Shane's video, where he mentioned how his just curled up and a lot of the new culms aborted earlier in the year, exactly the same thing happened here, which is very frustrating. All that growth as that leaf just passes by, giving a hint that cooler weather is certainly around the corner. These culms have dried up, they're not going to grow now. I've left them on just in case there's any chance of them sprouting, but you can see a lot of them are brown now rather than the beautiful blues and glaucous silvery greens. So unfortunately, I might have to chop those back. It means the plant's wasted a bit of energy this year, but overall, you know, hopefully next year is a better year. Plants like this, bamboo, a lot of them are incredibly tough. A lot of the Phyllostaches, the big runners like on this side here, these come from warmer, drier places, whereas the Farfugiums, the Berindas, tend to be higher altitude bamboo that maybe come from forest or woodland style environments. They need a bit more moisture, certainly than this year's given them. This year has been incredibly challenging for a lot of plants. A very dry spring leading to a very dry summer. Usually in UK gardens, we often talk about how many heatwave events we get in a year. This year, it's been how many rain events we've had. And until this past fortnight, they've really been sparse and rare. I mean, the garden here, my watering has very much been about keeping plants alive rather than helping them thrive. And other than the tree ferns, these beautiful plants here, these do need a lot of regular moisture. They absolutely need it to survive. Everything else in my garden here, it can cope without it to an extent, or should I say to varying extents. But I haven't been able to give them enough to really get them pushing off and thriving this year. See that banana, that would have grown another foot or maybe even 2 feet if I'd been able to give it a little bit more moisture. Don't get me wrong, there's plants like the Persicaria down here. These grow regardless, and in fact, I've given them another hack back today. They've had a few throughout the summer. These are something I spoke about in my last video over at Navenby New Build Jungle with Kieran, where we talked about how Persicaria Purple Fantasy, and over this side here, Red Dragon. Kieran called them boring bullies with a bit of spirit on from me. And these plants are, I mean, they're filler plants. They're nice enough. If you've got the space to really enjoy them as part of a wider picture, that's great. Here in my garden though, they've been very much a quick, cheap, easy, hardy filler plant. Lots of foliage, lots of leaves, lots of growth without any kind of fuss or hassle. But now I'm at the point where I'm thinking, do I want to grow something more exciting here in future years? And I guess a lot of you watching might be in a similar boat too, so let me know. Maybe plants like this here, this Boehmeria. This one, a gorgeous little plant. I believe this is a Mike Clifford plant that was actually given to Jenny and Roger Gresham over at the Secret Garden of Louth, and they were kind enough to share it with me. So I'm really excited to grow a lot of plants like this. Potentially not that mad stinging jungle nettle that Shane had in his garden to keep his mother-in-law off his bamboo, but we'll see. There is a sort of perverse enjoyment about growing something as ridiculously scary as that, isn't there? Over here you'll see a lot of the tree ferns, they're actually coping surprisingly well. The fronds on these, nice and big again this year. The plants themselves look as healthy as they can be. The leaves don't look like they've dried out too much, which is more than I can say for up there, that Hydrangea aspera Bellevue. That's the plant which large, luxurious leaves, but it needs much more rainfall. And if you've kept up with my videos, to be fair, I'm only really making this video for those of you that have, this area of my garden has really been a challenging spot. I've really come to believe it's mostly down to this cherry tree. Got this big, glorious, magnificent cherry tree here, covered in ivy. The ivy is a large plant in itself. Over there, Lelandii conifer, we've got buddleias there. There's a lot of demand on this soil for moisture. So really, when it comes to the big leaves, in a year like this one, they are going to struggle. Now, don't get me wrong, as much as this Gunnera is possibly welcoming an early end of the season, it's already started to brown up where it's really struggled for moisture, it'll come back just fine. There was a moment, possibly about a month back, where the whole thing started to flop over a little bit and I really had to put the soak hose on for a few hours. But other than that, with plants like this, I generally just accept it's not been the best year for them. It'll survive, it'll keep going to next year. It just needs more moisture than this year can give them, even in a very shady garden with plenty of organic matter dug in and worked over the soil over the past 5 years. But with the tree fern missing, I'm relying more than ever on the Gunnera to really pull off their thing at this part of the garden, and I'm pretty sure they will do it. You might be able to see I've had to chop a few leaves off them, which I don't like doing, but some leaves just got browned or blown in those winds we had around early August time. Can you remember? We had several really windy storms and it just snapped off them. So I've tried to tie them up a little bit, returning all the leaves to the ground, you'll be pleased to see, to help improve the soil for next year. But looking back, this plant here is one of the stars of my garden. From late summer into early autumn, this Hedychium Assam Orange really shows off. Isn't it just beautiful? I know they can grow bigger than this. With regular feeding, a lot of watering, a sunnier spot than this plant can really add drama, impact and vibrancy to your exotic style garden. But even here, in my shady, suboptimal jungle garden in North Lincolnshire, it's thriving. And this is, I believe, its third summer in the ground. I planted it 22, 23, somewhere around there. So for me at least, having a plant that's this height, it looks beautiful, lovely foliage, definitely fits in with the jungle look. Very, very easy to overwinter, doesn't take a lot of care in summer, and it reliably flowers. What more could you want? Gingers are such a fascinating plant. If you want to learn more about them, check out some of my recent garden tours. At Navenby New Build Jungle, Kieran shows us some of his favourite gingers, including Tara, which really is a beauty. And then at Shane Bilson's garden, he speaks about why these plants for him are a better choice than cannas. A lot of Hedychiums especially come from monsoon areas where basically they can tolerate wetter ground conditions than a lot of cannas can. And that's in northwest UK. So if people like myself and Shane can really grow these plants, maybe they're one that you should try as well. What I will say is people like Kieran actually lift a lot of his. When it comes to the more fancy varieties, I mean, I grow my Gardnerianum in pots. That stays in pots in a cool polytunnel. But this one I found in the ground, very tough, very hardy. For SDI, also may be a great choice for you. But seriously, lovely plants. And at a time of the year where a lot of the garden is just starting to look past its best, it's great to have this little fiery pop of colour. And I know, Sharon, they don't last as long as you want them to, but, you know, on another level, doesn't that make you just appreciate them so much? And actually, these Assam Orange, they create beautiful little red berries if you're lucky, so that interest will continue right up until the frost, where after the foliage is blackened, I'll probably just chop it down, mulch the plants with either some old compost or just a load of old leaves and leave them to it. Looking in there, you can see the Coleus, or Solenostemon as I should call them. They've certainly done the job this year. As I mentioned in my earlier summer jungle garden walk around, if I was really going to sort of finish off this whole part of the jungle here, I would have just bought a load more Coleus midsummer, chucked them in. You can get them Silica Lodge at Scunthorpe for £2 a plant, nice big plants in summer. I could have really put loads more of those in and just given it a nice vibrant look. But ultimately for me this year, the garden, it's not an open garden. I'm not too worried about how it looks when you're watching. It's just really a case of, for me, explore, experiment, and really, you know, have a go at some of the plants that I've not grown before. Plants like this Begonia, Emiensis there. Beautiful thing, apparently very tough and hardy. I will give it a bit of a mulch because it's planted quite high. But for me, the Coleus are very much, you know, just a sprinkling of colour that goes around the edges. And if I was really going to finish the garden off, spend 20 quid on Coleus, plant them midsummer when all the cold is behind you, and then they'll do this in autumn. Beautiful, very easy, lovely colours. You can even see there an unpainted nettle just thriving. Obviously missed that one. I should say I did about half an hour of what we call weeding before I started filming. Possibly could have done with a couple of hours, but there we go anyway. The ferns, they're looking fantastic. Beautiful plants. I mean, some of these Dryopteris, that glossiness to them, beautiful rich greens. There's a mixture of ferns here in my garden, and if you're really going to go big on the basics, plants like ferns absolutely belong in a jungle, exotic or tropical style garden. So easy to grow in the right kind of conditions, bit of shade, nice rich soil, plenty of moisture, and they absolutely thrive. We're here, next is Farfugium green giant. What a combination. There's something beautifully harmonious about just all the shades of green, isn't there? If you enjoy shades of green, seamless link there, check out my video over at Andrew and Anne-Marie Swift's beautiful 50 Shades of Green garden, where they really do, as the name suggests, go big on green. And also check out, if you haven't seen it, my video over at Georgina's jungle garden, where she grows a lot of tough, hardy, and what I will call easy to grow exotics, but with magnificent effect, really creating a tropical vibe that is absolutely her own and a beautiful garden to walk around. Here in my garden, a plant I rely on again, that tough, easy, beautiful colour and interest, hardy begonias. Honestly, just such an easy plant to grow. This year, they have struggled a little bit. They're not quite the size that they would usually be in September. If I show you down here, you can see that, yeah, they should really be double, triple this size and a bit more. The lack of water has certainly held them back a little bit, but they're coming in good now. And over the next couple of months, as the leaves on the trees slowly turn brown, orange, amber, and start to fall down, these hardy begonias, they'll be flowering away. They really keep doing their thing until it's time for them to turn as well. Lovely little plants, and you might even look down there and just see a couple of new ones popping up. They do spread around quite nicely. So yes, definitely, if you want late summer, early autumn colour, Hedychium gingers. Grow them in pots if you live somewhere colder, and then overwinter them in a polytunnel greenhouse. If you want to grow them in the ground, highly recommend Assam Orange for SDI, but experiment, go big. And if they're not flowering for you after a couple of years, possibly consider moving them to a sunnier spot, possibly dig them up, start them off in the greenhouse or polytunnel to give them a head start in spring, or maybe up the feeding and watering, because these plants really do respond so well to it. But when it comes to my autumn look, honestly, Hedychium gingers, the beautiful begonias, I mean, what more could you want? The ferns, the Farfugium, that jungle vibe really does continue right until the end of the season. This is part of the garden here that I did actually plant up. Most of the plants came through okay. There's a mixture really here of some hardy plants, like Impatiens Omiana Ice Storm there, which is actually just about to flower again, I think, but mainly going for the foliage. I've got some begonias, which are very much a tender bedding plant, but again, beautiful leaves and those lovely little spots of colour there. This one, I believe it's Bonfire or something along those lines, picked it up from Linden Nurseries early this year, and that glorious bright pop of colour just pairs so well with the Coleus, doesn't it? See there, actually, one of the begonias just popping through. I mean, just beautiful plants. They really are house plants for the garden, and this one, I believe, is actually the bells and whistles that Shane gave me when I last visited him last year. So yeah, a beautiful plant indeed. Lovely little dainty flowers, and as much as I am all about going big and bright when it comes to colourful flowers, really, these Begonia grandis, they've got it all, haven't they? And if this green is too subtle for you, just look underneath and you'll see these gorgeous maroon, claret coloured leaves. Just an amazing plant. In my garden here over the last couple of years, and I'm sure the next few as well, time will be very much limited, and as much as I'd love to have a border full of tender, beautiful plants that often come inside or get dug up or grown specifically for summer, I simply don't have the time to do that. So for me, plants I can leave in the ground that create this harmonious, flowing, beautiful exotic display without any care, tick every single box. So that's exactly what they'll be doing there. One plant though, which is still struggling, is this. Yes, the Ensete ventricosum morellii, or Ensete or Onset, pronounce it how you want. This plant though, it's still displaying that kind of disfigured, really brown, kind of marble into the leaves. Not great at all. Typically, as I say this, the new leaf almost looks pristine, and it's now again getting to that size where you think, wow, when you see it. Speaking as a plants person, I know that those leaves aren't looking the best. I don't like the browning to them. I know this plant isn't as healthy as it could be, but still, look at the size of it. It's done so well, and that's without pouring a load of feed on it. In fact, I think other than some slow release 6X at the start of summer, this plant's pretty much been left to it. So it's really done well. However, there's certainly something viral, fungal. There's something wrong with this, isn't there, ultimately? And as I discussed in my last video, I was actually tempted to leave this out this winter. I may still do that. Or what I might do is actually just chop it down at the back end of the season and dispose of it. Maybe give Ensete a bit of a rest for a couple of years. Try a different banana here, something completely different. Let me know what you think. As you know, as great as this plant is, beautiful stature and everything, when you've seen Ensetes grow well, like at Tony Shep's, it puts you off persisting with something that isn't performing, doesn't it? But, you know, we'll see, we'll see. I do feel like I've had a good dose of Ensetes over the last 5 years, at this house even, and then at the old house before, so maybe it's time to roll the dice and try something different. That Fatsia spider's web that got really hit back, it was a beautiful plant, then winter cut it back. It's come back, but it's nowhere near as beautiful as it was. Some nicely variegated leaves and then some which are plain green, so definitely not ideal. Unfortunately, that can happen, but again, I'll just be leaving that plant to do its thing there. It will bounce back, I'm sure. A mild winter would help, but, well, we'll very much see in that front, won't we? You might even notice that I've switched on the grand fountain for you, reminiscent of the towering feature at Chatsworth. Not at all, actually, no. This gentle little babbling certainly gives a bit of something in the background. Lovely little thing, and I actually got that reduced, I think, from B&Q some years ago. There's something wrong with it. I think the actual bit that holds this top bit in here, so it was very, very cheap. Unfortunately, Harriet enjoys pushing that bit down and then also picking the stones up and launching them around the garden. So not the best ward feature for people with children, but a nice bit of entertainment, and it certainly gives a little bit of something to the background noise, doesn't it? I mean, looking back, the Gunnera, it's still impressive, but there's lots of leaves with browning. There's some which, admittedly, I probably should chop off, but I'm actually at the point now where I don't want to chop any more leaves off because otherwise I won't have enough for overwintering. These giant leaves actually used to cover the crowns of rhizomes, so I very much want to leave on what I've got. So I've got enough left to cover those plants in a couple of months' time. See down here, Regersia already displaying its autumnal foliage, stressed from the dry year we've had, or potentially, as Shane pointed out, a lot of these plants now have had such a long growing season this year. Were it not for the real lack of water, I've got to say this year the growing conditions were pretty much perfect, certainly in terms of temperature. We rarely get a very, very early last frost. Such a beautiful, glorious sunny spring, leading straight into a real summer, do we? And if we'd had some of the rain over the past fortnight spread out more equally over summer, then wow, this would have been a fantastic summer for growth, wouldn't it? Gardeners know as much as anyone that you really have to work with what you've got, but it doesn't stop us moaning, does it? Up here, this Berinda papyrifera, I've really tried to keep this one going. I don't want all these culms to abort, and I might actually dig up and split this one up because potentially it's crowding out some of the key crops down there. I actually quite like the idea of exposing some of that wall, not just for visual aesthetic reasons, but also because, as you can probably tell from the brickwork there, it needs some more pointing up, a little bit of work doing to it, and it'd be a lot easier without that bamboo in the way. And one thing that I definitely picked up on from my trips to Tony's and Shane's gardens, don't be afraid to divide plants. A lot of plants like bamboo, the cannas, the gingers, they really thrive on it. And in fact, rather than hurting the plant, you're actually doing it good. You know, you're getting rid of that dead old growth out the middle. You're giving the edges chance for new growth, a fresh start. So honestly, don't be afraid about it. And I will be dividing some of my garden plants up very soon. Most of them I tend to wait till spring when it comes to the more exotic tropical stuff, but some of the tougher hardy ones, autumn with more rainfall, still warm soil, mild temps is the perfect time to do it. See, looking up here, this bamboo, Farfugium angustissima, what a bamboo. Don't know if you can see there actually, just how tall it's getting. What a plant. This bamboo really is one of my favourites in the garden. Yes, unlike the big Phylostachys, it doesn't have that size, the colour, that immense presence. But this Farfugium is so small, so tight at the base there. But then it erupts up into this huge fountain of foliage. Such a beautiful thing. And the leaves are so dainty too, aren't they? So small, so refined, just hang in a very graceful way. A very, very lovely bamboo. And if you haven't got a huge garden, but you want a bamboo in your garden that won't spread, I think Farfugium angustissima is a great choice for you. Looking at the ground, I will say that one of my upcoming projects at some point in the future is to dig up all of this soil here. So at the minute, whilst it's definitely a battle keeping on top of the weeds, the mossy growth, and round here, we've got plenty of ferns here, just germinating, creating this green kind of slime look. I will be digging all this out and continuing my hard landscaping from up there right way through this part of the garden, but one thing at a time, and it'll be easier to do that when I don't have these colossal leaves in the way. But on the subject of colossal leaves, one thing that I actually missed out on mentioning, down here, Hosta summoned substance. I mentioned that despite all the plants around it really struggling with lack of moisture, there was one Hosta which had really just absolutely defied the conditions, and it is summoned substance. This you saw in Shane Bilson's garden, where it was untouched by the slugs and snails. So a very, very tough hosta, very, very thick, leathery leaves, a beautiful look, one of the larger ones we can grow here. Honestly, an amazing plant, and one highly recommend it for your garden as well. Definitely fits in with the jungle vibe. But let's just push through this way a little bit more. So we look up here, you'll see Schefflera, this Taiwaniana, which was actually split into 3 from the December 22 cold spell. You can possibly see here that this section, this branch here, I might have to do some surgery on it, chopping it out, because that rot might spread a bit further. Not the most stable of the stems, but it'll hopefully provide some cutting material, which if you saw my video at Mark's earlier on in the year, well, let's say we'll give it a go, try and make some cuttings and see how we get on with it. Definitely something I haven't done before with Scheffleras, but I'm excited to give it a go, but that'll be definitely later on in the year. These ferns have really started to thrive now with the moisture. I guess really with ferns, a lot of the time, it's just about letting them build up gradually, let them establish, let them mature. With tropical style plants, a lot of them reach maturity, or a large size, should I say, in just 1, 2 or 3 years. But these ferns, it's only really this year that they're properly sized up. But now they all look beautiful, all the size that they should be. If I'd been a little bit more diligent chopping off the old fronds, the overall effect would be very green, very beautiful. So definitely great, easy, hardy, tough, exotic looking plants you can grow in your garden. But just to counter that, you haven't seen that weed down there, Pulmonarias. Sadie, someone I know locally, we actually swapped a couple of plants around and I got some of these Pulmonaria seedlings off her. I know Pulmonaria are quite a basic plant, they're a woodlander, but that's exactly why I wanted to go in my jungle garden, because under here, they've definitely got very little in the way of light. They're having to battle for moisture, intense root competition down here, particularly around the tree ferns, but they've absolutely thrived. And I think that foliage really fits in with the jungle vibe, doesn't it? So not every plant in a jungle or exotic garden has to be jungly or exotic. Sometimes, as I mentioned in my video at Kieran's, it's worth looking to the woodlanders for inspiration, particularly when it comes to the ground covers, the accessory plants, and plants for those tricky spots where very little else seems to thrive. But honestly, this area, it's come together quite nicely. Yes, I know on the face of it, the garden, it's not as beautiful or as aspirational as it possibly could be. Finishing touches, well, I'm not even at the point where I can do finishing touches, but when it comes to the plants in the background, they've really put on a serious amount of growth this year. I mean, look here, this Trachycarpus princeps new form hybrid, or Fortunii crosser princeps, it's now getting massive. That growing point now is taller than me. The leaves reaching up, what a beauty. And again, bought as a very small plant. And in fact, the one that was actually bought even smaller than that, just look at that Nova. Trachycarpus Nova, slender, very long petioles, not the most wind resistant, but very fast growing. And now just look at the size of those leaves. This one almost sharing that bluey silvery underside with the Princeps hybrids. Very beautiful palm, very fast growing. So really, if you can start with palms, the Trachycarpus, I'll mention it again, around a 30 litre size, they just perform so well. This bamboo here that we're just walking past, Lushuiensis, which is a glorious bamboo. I mean, just look at the size of this. Reaching up there into that cherry tree, what a monster. And this is one that I'm potentially splitting before Shane gets here or when he's down here, because I think this will look amazing in his garden, where I'm sure he will test the hardiness of it. But for me, although it does brown up the foliage when there's around -6, -7, It soon bounces back in spring, and this plant absolutely deserves its space in the garden. But when it comes to space, I potentially need it to be a little bit further from this tree fern. So definite theme running through all my videos of getting things in a little bit too close. So I'll be splitting that one up there, leaving some in the ground here, taking a clump myself for another little project, and then also letting Shane have some as well. Over here, Fatsia polycarpa, this one the Needham's form. You can probably see the leaves aren't looking as disfigured as they were in previous years, so on the whole, I would say that's a success. This part of the garden here, I didn't want something that was over the top, overtly tropical, bold and colourful. I wanted a more harmonious, flowing, naturalistic green entrance to the garden, an immersive experience as you walk through, and it's gradually getting there now, isn't it? Even without the complementary small plants down the sides, that atmosphere is still very much there. These are a plant that will be splitting very soon. As you can probably tell, epimedium, I believe this is sulfurium, something like that. Those are one of my favourites, but the clumps are now getting to a good big size where I can start chopping them up, spreading them around, particularly around the area where the new ponds go in. I think some of these will absolutely thrive there because they seem to thrive with, well, no care whatsoever. They're definitely more drought tolerant than a lot of these ground covers can be. So really, this is a plant for me. I want it more in my garden. And autumn time is a great time to split them up. You probably see under here, Asarum europaeum, beautiful hardy ginger. That one, a lovely ground cover. And then we get to this part of the garden here where, you know, a little bit more care possibly was required. Some of the plants that I usually bring out for summer here, my house plants, haven't come out this year. So I've really been relying on the ferns, the tree ferns, and the bananas to do their thing. The back there, Musa Tibet, that was the one which was cut right back down to the ground. With more moisture again, I suspect it would have been probably twice the height, but it's not done bad. However, this year, again, I will split that up, move a couple of plants into my polytunnel, one that might get shared around. A lovely plant, beautiful banana, something different to Baju, and potentially I might actually plant one of these where I take the Ensete out, we will see. The Tejpanax, although that got cut back, it's come back again, but not really in the most impressive way, not at all. So maybe more moisture required, maybe it's been too dry a year for them, who knows. Looking at this Musa Baju, although this one came through winter, I'm mostly intact, it's hardly grown, and again, pretty much down to the moisture as far as I'm concerned. But if we look over here, you will see some new planting. I took out the struggling tree fern from there, I potted it up, give it another chance, and I'll introduce it somewhere that sees a bit more shade, gets a little bit more regular watering than here. And I've given this whole part of the garden a layer of mulch before planting a few new plants. This beautiful heuchera or heucherella was given to me by Marie, who has watched some of my videos, and it was a pleasure to meet her over at the Secret Garden of Louth. So thank you very much for that beauty. Look at that colouring on the leaves, isn't it fantastic? Beautiful. And here, I've got it next to this plant here. This is what Kieran referred to as the original G. Yes, the other hardy colocasia. So thanks to this, Tony, I'm excited to see this really thrive here, and I really want to introduce more of that tropical flair, but keeping to the greens in this part of the garden. But that's something for next spring, really. It was just a pleasure to put a few new plants in the ground and also get some mulch down to really neaten the area up. One thing I've definitely learned is I can't approach projects or garden transformation type events with my usual all or nothing mentality. I have to just do a little bit here or there, which is a tricky lesson to learn, but you know, one that I'm starting to get there with. Up here, we'll see another Berinda papyrifera. This one, no problems with new culms whatsoever, which is really bizarre because this one actually gets watered much less than the one near my concrete area around the corner. So no idea why, but this one is really thriving. A lovely plant. And then if we look down here, we'll see a Xanthodecia and a Schefflera alpina. More presents from Shane Bilson. So yes, Shane, much appreciated. Those will find a home somewhere else, but I won't be planting them out this year. Up there, Trachycarpus princeps new form hybrid again. The Fortunii crossed with princeps. A beautiful palm. This one not as fast growing, but the leaves are just colossal, massive things, and it holds them really nicely. So a beautiful plant, a beautiful bamboo. What can I say about the jungle garden this year? Well, I suppose in summary, my progress has been very limited, as usual. But in one sense, you know, I don't really mind. I'm not opening the garden, I'm not putting it on display. I appreciate everyone who watches my videos, but you know what life is like as much as I do. You know, it's all about the long game, isn't it? And for me, although my summer display, for want of a better word, is minimal, limited, has gaping holes in it, like down there, it's all about the pleasure of seeing some of the plants in the background really grow, really develop, really establish. Plants like that Nova there, going from a small plant to now towering over my head, what a beauty. Plants like this Princeps hybrid, I mean, a small palm going to a full-on specimen in 5 years, that is just sensational, isn't it? And really taking enjoyment out of seeing some of these big plants really get massive this year has more than balanced up the challenges of having to water the garden more than I'd like to. Yes, it's been a tricky odd year, hasn't it? Please let me know in the comments below, you know, how has your garden changed and evolved this year? And possibly more importantly, how have you changed and evolved? Has having to water your garden a lot more regularly really influenced your planting style going forwards? Or have you not been able to water your garden? Have you had hosepipe bans? And how have you actually really helped your garden survive this year? Well, I'd really be intrigued to know. Let me know if you've got any ideas for my garden going forwards. But I'm really excited to, one day in the future, when all this is dug up, hard landscaping down, just put the finishing touches to this back of the garden in spring and look ahead to another glorious summer. What an event that will be. When I can finally pot around, water everything as much as I possibly can, enjoy some of this summer colour, and also not have as many weeds. But on that note, thank you very much for watching what has been a rambling, chatty walk around the garden here. One day in the not so distant future, it will really look something special, to me at least anyway, and that really is the only thing that matters. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you had a great weekend and all the best for the coming week. See you later.